This is quite the ball of gas we're on, isn't it? Or that thin atmosphere, that thin blue line that keeps us from all of this. It's hard to believe that we're just going to go screw it up, like we haven't got a plan B. And we're going to just like destroy this place. If a meteor doesn't get us first. But anyhow, what I'd like to do is talk to you today about one of my favorite places, one of my favorite routes in the Canadian Rockies, which I consider the Canadian Rockies to be one of the great mountain ranges. I love it. So why don't we take a look at one of my favorite places, which would be here at Abbott's Pass. And this is the what we're going to talk about today. In the hidden trails of the Canadian Rockies. This right here is Abbott's Pass. Alright, I'm going to show you guys one of my favorite routes of all time, the Makai Ledges. Now these ledges are famous, and they were officially, I think it was in 1997 that the Parks Canada officially changed this route to the Makai Ledges. I wouldn't recommend it for most people unless you're a very serious scrambler or a mountaineer to a certain degree, you know, like you can climb Andromeda and Athabasca and those kinds of things, then this route would be perfect for you. For hikers, probably not so much, just because of some of the abject hazards. Let's assume you're starting the route and going up to Lake O'Hare, and then from Lake O'Hare you have the next stage where you start walking, and you go up into Abbott's Pass, right up into here, and the next stage is to go around Lefroy, and then down and out Lake Louise. So the thing you'll have to do is have a vehicle at the end of the thing and a vehicle at the beginning, or somehow arrange a shuttle. This section we'll have a look at first, and then we'll have a more detailed talk about the section around Lefroy, because this is where the mountaineering issue is going to be and where your rockfall hazards are going to be in here. And then once you're down into the valley, it's pretty straightforward. So this is Lake O'Hare, taken from the ledges on Yuckness. When you come up from the bus, you'll be coming up this valley and get dropped off right about here. From there, you're just going to follow the lake shore. And when you're about a third of the way around, you'll hit a break where there's a park sign, and it says to go up to Lake Owessa or the Yuckness trails. And you'll find this classic trail, and you'll see why everybody goes on and on about the trails at Lake O'Hare. So here we're looking down at the scree slopes that you have to ascend to get to Abbott's Pass. This is from the Lake O'Hare side. And you'll find if you stick close to these rocks in here, it's a little bit firmer. The trail tends to be built up, but snow creep each year kind of destroys the trail, and it gets rebuilt every summer. There'll be a lot less traffic now that the hut is closed, so you can plan on your bivvy to be pretty quiet at Abbott's hut. You can also use part of the hut for shelter, so you can camp in the lee of the hut. Just bring a tarp. There's a couple of good places. Even though the hut is locked up, it still offers some shelter with some of the rock walls there. You can see Lake Owessa way down here in the background, and you just work your way across these slopes and then back and forth until you get up to here, and we're just below the pass is where this photo was taken. So as a little side note, here in Abbott's Pass, there's a hut, and these photos do a good job of picking it out. And back in the day, like in the 1920s or even earlier than that, they used to come up this is what's called the death trap. and they brought up a bunch of mules and with crampons on, and as far as they could bring them, and then they brought up all the materials to build a hut. So a lot of those old Swiss guides were also craftsmen at other things, at woodworking and masonry and things, carpentry work. What we used to do was stay at the hut and then continue our trip the next day. Now we don't really have much choice but to have an open bivvy. Let's get Cam Douglas up and let's pipe the old hut into a new era where we don't have that hut anymore.
Beautiful.
Thank you.
There you go.
2015, what this little pocket glacier looked like, and it was the foundation for Abbott's hut. So when we're talking, this is Abbott's hut up in the upper left-hand corner. So this is all disappeared now, and all this gravel has gotten in, and this whole slope is, many degrees, like 20 degrees steeper than it was at what we're looking at right now. So it's like 40, 45. And so this hut has lost its foundation and can no longer be trusted. Right, so the one other thing I'd like to mention is in this area here, there's these steep gullies. You don't really see them. And they're 10 meters or 15 meters wide, a couple of them. There's some bolts set up on the far side. It's kind of set up intended for guiding. If you were to bring a rope, I'd say 20 meters of a half rope would be plenty. So this is the way you'll be going. This bench down in here, if you're coming up from Lake Louise, I would suggest, bivvying there and then crossing this in the morning in underneath the Lefroy where the rock fall is, which is just out of sight on the right-hand side. From here, we're looking to the south. So this is Abbott's hut, and Abbott's Pass right here. And Lake O'Hare is in the background here. If you're going to get screwed up, this is a place where it's going to happen. This is generally just a snowfield. There's no crevasses in here. And you want to get under this kind of steep little ledge system and bring yourself along till you get out onto this plateau. And you sort of follow this plateau down. And it takes you sort of feeds you right into the bottom of these cliffs, and if you keep following it down and down, you'll catch this bench. And as you get to this bench, it'll take you down into the valley. There's a couple of places you want to worry about. Basically is right up here with rock above you, and then these slopes you don't want to be in the late afternoon, or so that's why it's kind of a 2-day trip, because later in the afternoon there's so much rockfall coming down these slopes, and then there's always the potential for an avalanche hazard, given whatever the conditions are. So you have to be aware of that, and that's why this is highly recommended as a mountaineering trip. So this is the main part of the ledges, and you can see where there's chains and bolts are put up and these cables are in place, just on the exposed parts. Most of the trail is pretty good, and you could, you know, anybody with good balance and common sense could cross this thing without the use of those cables. In this case, I had the clients roped together, and then I just put these periodically quick draws, just so that if one person were to slip off, it wouldn't take the whole group with them. This is at the end of it, and this is where you got to really watch. You're getting off of here. You can get down in here and across down onto these ledges and onto the scree slope. This will be one of the cruxes of your problems. It's not that bad, but once you're out here, you're exposing yourself to rockfall from above. So you don't want to spend a lot of time hanging out in here. And if you're doing the ascent from the Lake Louise side coming up and are going to bivvy on the other side of the ledges on the plateau before Abbott's hut, and I suggest you do that rather than trying to go to Abbott's Pass in one day from Lake Louise. It's so much nicer just to bivvy on the ledges above the Swiss ladders and on the plateau before Mount Lefroy. But here's kind of what it looks like, you know. This is what the ledge system is. It's quite wide, actually, so you'd have a hard time falling off of it. And it's fairly sheltered by having a bunch of rock wall above it. And you can see some of the rope and chain work here. And it's spectacular. Like, this is what it looks like, right? And this is your Chateau Lake Louise down in the right-hand corner. So if you're debating on which side to come up, whether Lake O'Hare, go over Abbott's Pass, and then down to Lake Louise, or Lake Louise to Abbott's Pass, because of the difficulty of making reservations on that bus, as the Lake O'Hare Lodge seems to have that place pretty locked up for themselves, I would suggest maybe starting at the Lake Louise side, start nice and early, and then bivvy at the plateau where we've mentioned a couple of times. So your option there is to start over here at Lake Louise, come up the valley, and then up this valley up here, and then bivvy at this site right in here. And then in the morning when it's all good and frozen, you can just walk across Abbott's Pass down and either catch the bus here, or you can do this nice pleasant walk out. But yeah, and the bus schedule I think is like 3 o'clock. You'll have to look into that. And the last one leaves at 5 or something, or 4.